It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the movies of August 21st, 1992. We've got 7 movies to look at today, so let's not waste any more time. Let's jump on into it and start off with the first movie that we have here, the biggest new release of the week, and that is the late Brandon Lee in the action-adventure film Rapid Fire.
Brandon Lee is Jake Lowe. He wasn't looking for trouble.
Please tell me what changed!
But it found him anyway.
The Chicago branch of La Cosa Nostra.
He hasn't pulled the trigger in 15 years. And you, my friend, were there to see it.
Now, he's a witness.
We'll be under 24-hour FBI protection.
So who else is testifying against this guy?
Who's about to become a target.
Freeze!
The only way to fight fire is with fire. Put him out of here.
I think I've had enough police protection.
Rapid fire. The face.
So Rapid Fire was most notably known as the last movie that Brandon Lee did before he was shot and killed accidentally on the set of The Crow, which wouldn't come out for another 2 years, but this is a movie that came out, wasn't the hugest hit when it came out, but when you look at the movie overall, really, it's a movie that it's a movie that I think works because of Brandon Lee. It shows the potential that he could have had as an actor had he not been killed by accident. Like it's a really solid performance by him. I think the script overall is very generic, very formulaic, very much a similar type of story that we've seen done over and over again before. But Lee's character really, I think, Lee does carry the movie all the way through. It shows the potential that could have been if he was still alive today, but it shows that he definitely had a chance to really become a great action star if he really had the chance to be alive to do these type of movies. Even though I don't think the movie itself is all that great, it did show the potential of what Brandon Lee could eventually become. But directed by Dwight H. Little, we've talked about a couple of his movies before, including Marked for Death and The Phantom of the Opera. Another movie that's not a good movie, not really a bad movie either, just kind of run-of-the-mill. It's a movie that's pretty generic for the most part, but it works I think, because of Brandon Lee. I think he does carry the movie a lot more than I think anybody expected it to. If there was a little bit less of the cliches, a little bit less formulaic stuff, this movie probably could have been something really good, but if you're looking for a decent action film, I would say this is definitely worth it, because the action sequences in here are still very impressive, and again, Brandon Lee really does carry this movie, and again, it's a shame that this was the last movie that he made while he was still alive, because he really could have been a decent actor, and have a decent set of action movies if he had stayed alive after what happened with The Crow. But sadly, it was not meant to be, unfortunately. But I think this movie works mostly because of Lee and the action sequences. It doesn't work because of the story being very cliched, and most of the other characters are not really all that impressive, but if you're going to watch this movie, you watch it for Brandon Lee, and you watch it for the action sequences, because they do carry the film overall. So, that's Rapid Fire. Let's go ahead and move on to the next movie that we have here, and that is Christopher Columbus: The Discovery, appropriately enough, because this is actually being filmed on Columbus Day. This episode in particular is being filmed on Columbus Day 2022, and this was actually the first of an unusual number of Christopher Columbus movies that came out in 1992. We'll go ahead and explain that in just a little bit, but here's the trailer for the Alexander Salkind-produced Christopher Columbus: The Discovery.
In a time when the leaders of the church were as powerful as gods,
You are presuming to defy the judgment of the Holy Father.
he seduced a queen.
You have a way with women, and as God has given me my dream, I intend to give you yours.
and commanded a crew of murderers and thieves.
How does a hardened convict get the rest of his money?
On the most dangerous journey ever undertaken.
I suspect that he will never return.
Beyond the conspiracy, the betrayal,
Mutiny is punishable by death.
lies the breathtaking spectacle of the discovery. Alexander Salkind presents Marlon Brando, Tom Selleck, George Corofas, Rachel Ward. The most exciting part of the adventure is the tale that has never been told. Christopher Columbus, The Discovery.
So I should explain that 1992 was the 500th anniversary of Christopher Columbus's voyage, where he goes out to try to find the West Indies islands and actually comes across the discovery of America. And like I said before, there were a lot of movies that came out during that time period. I think mostly because it was the 500th anniversary. You had this movie, then you had 1492, Conquest of Paradise, which was directed by Ridley Scott. The Carry On series had a movie about Columbus called Carry On Columbus, and then there was also an animated movie about Christopher Columbus with Dom DeLuise as the voice of Columbus, The Magic Voyage. None of these movies are really all that good. In fact, the only one that I would say is probably the decent one is 1492, Conquest of Paradise, but that one doesn't come out until, looks like October, so we'll get to that one eventually, but it's the best of the Columbus movies, but it's not really saying all that much. But there were a lot of movies like that then. If you watch Naked Gun 33 1/3, they actually do have a joke at the Academy Awards where one of the categories is Best Actor in a Columbus Movie, which is topical for the time period. It's a joke that probably wouldn't hold up by today's standards, but it's still kind of funny when you watch that movie. But we'll get to Naked Gun 33 1/2 later when we get to 94, but this movie in particular is pretty bad. It's a movie that has a notorious behind-the-scenes history, and the fact that both the Salkind brothers, Alexander and Ilya, had an emotional falling out between this, and Alexander, a year later, would later say that after this movie, he knew that he would never make movies again. And this is the guy that produced Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, Supergirl, just some other notorious bombs, but this was the one that did it for him, and really, you can kind of see why. There is really a lot here that is wrong in this movie. Marlon Brando's really bad in this movie. Tom Selleck is not very good. He's playing he's very cartoonish in here. This leading actor, Georges Corofas, who I guess they were trying to pin as this next new star. I don't think he ever did anything after this particular movie. Most notable things about this movie is that Tom Selleck won a Razzie Award for Worst Supporting Actor. Marlon Brando was nominated for Worst Supporting Actor, and there were some other Golden Raspberry nominations to it, including Worst Picture, Worst Director, Worst New Star. And this was a surprise to me. I completely forgot that this was written by Mario Puzo of The Godfather, and it's just like, wow. Mario Puzo, the man who wrote the Godfather trilogy, wrote this movie. I mean, that's amazing. That's amazing how badly your career has gone. Even for John Glenn, who we already talked about one of his bad movies, Aces Iron Eagle 3, already this year. But this was the guy that directed 5 James Bond movies prior to this. And now this is where he's gone to. And this is the second to last movie he ever directed, and the last one he would make for almost 10 years. I mean, talk about a movie that just completely ruins a lot of careers, and a lot of these careers never really got back on the ground again for the most part. Like I said, for the most part, I mean, you did have a couple of stars that made it out of this. Brando made it out of this. Selleck made it out of this. Catherine Zeta-Jones made her in one of her early film roles. Of course, she went on to become a big star. Bottom line, the movie just isn't very good. It's a very sloppily written movie. It tries way too hard. The acting is not good. scenes that are supposed to be taken very seriously are laughable. It's a horrible movie on so many levels. It's one of those movies that really is one of those films that needs to have a documentary about the fact that it is one of the most interesting film failures of all time, because it really is. Like, it seems like a mess of a movie on so many levels. So that's really all I got to say about this one. Christopher Columbus, The Discovery. It's pretty bad. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie that we have here, and that is The Gun in Betty Lou's Handbag.
She was just a quiet housewife.
She's going through some hormonal changes.
Shut up, Alex!
Until she confessed to a murder she didn't commit.
I'm guilty.
And became the talk of the town.
It's always the quiet ones.
Officer Perkins, how well do you know your wife?
My whole life flashed before my eyes, so I pulled the trigger.
I want to believe you. I really do.
Now, this sweet little librarian.
That's Betty Lou Perkins.
Hell, I don't go to the library enough.
Is at the center of attention.
We did your hair!
And on top of the world.
People have always gotten the wrong idea about me. I can live with it.
The Gun in Betty Lou's Handbag.
She almost killed me in the bathroom.
Speaking of notable failures, what the hell did I just watch? I mean, man, talk about a movie that's not funny whatsoever, has a lot of annoying people in it, has a really good cast to it. You got Penelope Ann Miller in here, you've got Julianne Moore, William Forsythe, Alfred Woodard, Catherine Moriarty. Just a great cast overall being wasted on this movie. Wow, this is a bad, bad movie. I've seen this movie before. I watched it one time a couple of years ago, and I couldn't believe how bad this was, especially with everybody involved in it. The thing that shocked me the most in looking at research for this again is that this is directed by Alan Moore, whose last movie was the far superior Pump Up the Volume, and then after this, his next movie would be another cult hit, which would be Empire Records. So in between Pump Up the Volume and Empire Records, he makes this movie, which just seems like an overall disaster on so many levels. I mean, I didn't laugh once in that trailer. I remember watching this movie, and I didn't remember laughing, period. Just a mess of a movie on so many levels. I don't know what the hell they were thinking when they made this movie. It's a generic script. This leading character is not all that exciting whatsoever. There's just not any good laughs in here. There's nothing funny about it. The story is very predictable and cliche. It's a really bad movie on so many levels. So that's The Gun in Betty Lou's Handbag. Let's go ahead and move on to the next movie then, and that is Little Nemo: Adventures in Slumberland.
From the director of Home Alone.
I'm really flying.
Comes a magical tale for the entire family.
Welcome to Slumberland, my boy.
When a little boy has big dreams, anything is possible.
Your Majesty, may I present little Nemo?
And every wish can come true.
I hereby crown you Prince Nemo. Let the celebration begin.
Take off on a wondrous adventure with a young explorer.
It will be Prince Nemo's solemn duty to protect Slumberland from the Nightmare King as I have done.
Who must save the life of a noble king.
Nemo, give me the royal scepter! He's been taken away to Nightmare Land.
Outmatch the power of a mighty monster.
Ooh, pajamas do scare me so.
And win the heart of a beautiful princess.
No one has ever accepted a royal invitation in his underwear.
Share the excitement. The laughter.
Oh, I haven't had this much fun in years.
Neither have I.
The music of Little Nemo. With songs by Melissa Manchester and Academy Award winners Richard and Robert Sherman.
This is great.
Featuring the voice of Mickey Rooney as Flip.
Did anyone ever tell you you're kind of cute when you're angry?
Now, let the child in your heart fly.
Quite the prince you become, my little Nemo.
Little Nemo, Adventures in Slumberland.
Man, talk about a major missed opportunity. There's no real way to talk about this movie than to talk about This is another one of those movies that's one of those interesting film failures, because this began development back in 1982, and they had a number of people aboard on this project, including animators that had worked at Disney, Star Wars, Looney Tunes, Studio Ghibli, names such as George Lucas, Chuck Jones, Ray Bradbury, Brad Bird, Jerry Rees, Chris Columbus. You see his name in the credits as one of the writers on here, and it's also advertised as from the director of Home Alone, which it's kind of true, but then it's kind of not. You also have Frank Thomas, Ollie Johnson, two classic Disney writers, Paul Julian, a classic animator at Warner Brothers. Well, not Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnson were not writers, they were animators, I should say. The Sherman Brothers wrote the music for this. Hayao Miyazaki, who was working at TMS at the time. Gary Kurtz, the producer of Star Wars. This was supposed to be the big showcase for TMS. TMS Animation, if you don't know who they are, you've definitely seen their work before, because they've done their best work. They are most notably known for working on Akira, which is a classic animated film, but they also did the animation for classic American shows like Tiny Toons, Animaniacs, Batman the Animated Series, a lot of the Warner Brothers shows from the 90s, a lot of the Disney afternoon shows from the 80s and 90s. So this was supposed to be their big showcase film to really show off what they could do as an animation studio, and the end result is a nicely animated film, but a film with a lot of creative and writing plot holes to it. I mean, this is a movie that really looks impressive, but when you look at the script overall for this is a movie that has a really lousy written script, but mostly because it was a jumbled mess, because you have all these creative minds coming in here, and they're not really giving these characters a whole lot to do, especially Nemo, who's voiced by Gabriel Damon, who you may remember as the voice of Littlefoot from Land Before Time, and also the kid from RoboCop 2. And all of Little Nemo's dialogue in this particular movie is mostly just expressions, like him saying yippee all the time, and just not really having much of a defined character, but he's supposed to be the main hero of the film. A lot of the people in this movie, a lot of the characters in this movie really have no real intentions except to just play the typical characters that they're playing, and the situation that these characters are put into are not really all that inventive. They're not really all that creative. The songs in here are not that memorable. I mean, you've got the Sherman Brothers working on this movie. I mean, these are guys that could turn any song in this movie into musical gems. But here, there's just nothing in here. It's a movie that really fails to really get the potential that they could have gotten out of this, because this is based off of a comic strip series from the 1910s. 1900s, 1910s. There really could have been something incredible with this movie that could have been done with it, but I think because there was just so many problems behind the scenes of how to present this movie and how to write this script better, how to make these characters come out better, I think the movie really suffers big time, and it's a shame too, because, like I said, the movie has some great animation to it. I mean, this is TMS, this is a great animation company, but really, I think their showcase project really came from Akira, which is a movie that we still talk about today as not only one of the great animated movies of all time, but one of the great movies of all time. But this movie in particular really, it's a shame that it didn't turn out as well as I think they could have been, because this really could have been something amazing. And maybe, hopefully, one day somebody will actually do something with this property, because there is a lot of potential with these Little Nemo stories that could be translated into animation in film form. I think there's a lot of potential here. There really was a lot of potential in this movie that could have been done, but it just never really got a chance to really show off what it could really do, because a lack of good character development and a lack of a good story to give these characters to work with. And yeah, it's a shame that it didn't work out, because there really was a lot of potential here that just really fell apart quickly with this movie. So it's a shame too, because like I said, there was a lot of potential there, and the animation still looks great over 30 years later. So, but it is what it is. That's Little Nemo Adventures in Slumberland for you. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is Stephen Hawking's A Brief History in Time.
A good model, if first it interprets a wide range of observations in terms of a simple and elegant model, and second, if the model makes definite predictions that can be tested and possibly falsified by observation.
Unfortunately, I couldn't find a trailer for this one, but I did find that May trailer online. Basically, this is the biographical documentary about the life of Stephen Hawking, whose life would later be turned into another movie, which is The Theory of Everything. This is a movie this basically takes from Hawking's book, A Brief History of Time, but whereas the book is solely an explanation of cosmology, the film is additionally about the life of Hawking and interviews with his family and his colleagues. And it has Errol Morris's collaborator Philip Glass doing the music for this. And I've actually seen this documentary before. I saw it once on TV, and it's a pretty decent movie. It's a pretty solid film that showcases the life of Hawking and how he became what he became known for. Some of the interesting theories and situations that he worked on during the course of his life. It's a solid, entertaining movie. It's a movie that has a really good score to work with by Glass. And it does a good job of explaining who Philip Hawking, good lord, who Stephen Hawking is, and it doesn't dumb it down for the audience. It's a movie that really gives you a lesson about who this guy was and what amazing things he did during his life. And it's a pretty good documentary. If you want to see something about the life of Stephen Hawking, this is definitely worth a watch. A Brief History of Time. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is Willem Dafoe in Light Sleeper.
I feel my life turning. You drift from day to day. Years go by. Then a change comes. I am able to change. I can be a good person. What a strange thing to happen halfway through your life.
In Taxi Driver, the revelations disturbed you. In American Gigolo, the images provoke you. And now from Paul Schrader comes a story about the discovery of the spirit.
Everything you need is around you. The only danger is inside you.
The lure of decadence.
I have a strong feeling about this woman, a woman close to you. She will betray you.
And the chance for escape.
If I could do that, I could do anything.
What does that mean?
We could do anything.
Somewhere in this isolation.
So Light Sleeper is written and directed by Paul Schrader. As you see from the trailer, it's basically following Willem Dafoe as this high-class drug dealer who's battling with a midlife crisis. He becomes embroiled in tragic events following the chance encounter with a former girlfriend. And the movie is basically just him going through all these different adventures. Like, he sees his ex-wife. They stopped dating because he became abusive. He became addicted to drugs. And he has a one-night stand with somebody, and just all these different crazy things happen in this movie. And the movie itself is largely forgotten. It's a movie that didn't do so well at the box office, even though it did well enough with critics. But the movie overall is actually pretty decent. Paul Schrader's made a ton of good movies, some very underrated films in my opinion. He's the man who's most notably known for writing stuff like Taxi Driver, Rolling Thunder, Raging Bull, The Mosquito Coast, The Last Temptation of Christ. But as a director, most of his movies have not been great, but some of them have been really good, like movies like Hardcore, George C. Scott movie American Gigolo, Cat People. This is one of his more underrated movies in my opinion. This is a movie that doesn't really get talked about a whole lot, but works mostly because of the great performances. Willem Dafoe in this movie is fantastic in this movie. You've got Susan Sarandon, Dana Delaney's in this movie, Victor Garber, Sam Rockwell's in this, as well as David Spade as a cokehead, which is very interesting and funny to watch. But, yeah, the movie overall is very good. It's a movie that doesn't get talked about a whole lot, but it's a movie that's definitely very underrated. It's a film that you really should give a chance at. You should really give it a good chance to see it. It's definitely worth it, especially if you want to see a great Willem Dafoe performance that doesn't get a whole lot of attention. This movie is definitely it. I'd say definitely go ahead and check out Light Sleeper. You will not be disappointed by it. So, with that said, on to the last movie, and that is The Ox.
Utan också här hos oss ligger åldringar och små barn för döden. Irrläror och falska rykten är i omlopp om välstånd och lättförtjänta rikedomar annorstädes i världen.
So no trailer for that part, and I had to take a clip from the movie itself. I don't even know if I took a part that was actually relevant to the plot of the film, but the plot of the movie is, in desperation brought on by near starvation, Hel Garus kills his master's ox and feeds it to his wife and baby daughter. No one suspects anything until the meat is finished and Hel tries to sell the hide at a local market. He is spotted by the local victor and, racked with guilt, confesses. The vicar assaults him that if he gives up, he'll be treated leniently but Helga's sentence is far harsher than anyone predicted. And that's pretty much all I know about this movie because I've never seen it, and I know nothing really about it. So, but it's got Stellan Skarsgård in it. Max von Sydow is also in it as well. It was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film at the Oscars that year. That's pretty much all I got for you because I know nothing about this movie, and you know, judging by the synopsis right there, it doesn't really sound like a lot, but it could be a lot. Like I don't know. Maybe this movie actually is worth it, but I haven't seen it. Can't really comment on it, but I know it came out that weekend, and we're gonna acknowledge it. So there you go. That's pretty much everything I know about the Ox. So with that said, let's wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. We'll wrap up August on the next episode with 5 movies, including Nicolas Cage, James Caan, and Sarah Jessica Parker in Honeymoon in Vegas, another 1992 movie taking place in Las Vegas. We'll have that one. We'll also have the horror sequel, Pet Sematary 2, David Lynch's Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, Freddy as FR07, or as it was later released on video as Freddy the Frog, and also Storyville. So 5 movies to look at next time around, and we will look at those movies next time. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, go ahead and hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for another episode. So thank you for watching, I'll see you guys next time, and until then, as always, take care.